reforms. What are land reforms? Land reforms means the redistribution of land from rich farmers to the landless. In order to restore the balance in the society, it is seen as an instrument of social justice. Land reforms means the redistribution of land from rich farmers to the landless. In order to restore the balance in the society, it is seen as an instrument of social justice. Land reforms aims to alter the power structure, both economic and political. Land reforms aim to alter the power structure, both economic and political. The second 5-year plan defines the objective of land reform as the creation of conditions for bringing efficiency in the agrarian economy and to establish an egalitarian society. Two major objectives of land reforms are social justice and economic efficiency. Land reforms are based on the philosophy of socialism. It prefers distributive justice over economic growth. Distributive justice concerns with just allocation of resources. It aims at equality of outcomes in contrast to the equality of procedure. History of land reforms. According to Baden-Powell in his book The Land System of British India, the agrarian structure during British administration emerged from a strong historical background. The land revenue system implemented by Mughals, a first land revenue system designed by Todarmalu, was the possible beginning of systematic efforts to manage land. However, the British created a tax collecting community called Jamindars. Rajani Parmadat, in his book India Today, there were two objectives behind this: simplifying the land revenue collection process and extracting high revenues, creating a rural elite class with vested interest in British political. During the Indian national movement, peasants had participated, especially after the arrival of Gandhi. It was the promise of INC to devise a policy on land reforms. Therefore, just after independence, Congress Agrarian Reform Committee was set up under the chairmanship of J.C. Kamarappa. The committee strongly recommended a comprehensive land reform program before any kind of agrarian reform. Constitutional provision. First Amendment Act of 1951, Article 31A was inserted for saving of laws providing for acquisition of property. Law is passed by a state legislature. Article 31A was inserted, which talked about the 9th schedule. It provided immunity to those laws which were put in the 9th schedule. However, the Coelho case stand and ruled that there can't be a blanket immunity to the laws in 9th schedule because Indian judiciary has recognized doctrine of basic structure in case of non-Bharati case of 1973. Article 39B and C makes it a constitutional obligation in state to ensure that the material resources of the country are distributed uniformly to serve the common good. The 7th schedule of Indian Constitution reflects land reform subject in the state list. Advisory role in the legislation of laws related to land reforms. 25th Amendment Act of 1991 inserted Article 31C, which talks about saving of laws giving effect to certain directive principles from judicial review under the 44th Amendment Act 1990 repealed right to property as a fundamental right and recognized it as a legal right under Article 30 of land reforms. PC Just Land reforms in India, trends and perspective. Land reforms by state through statutory enactment and constitutional amendments. As example, First Amendment Act, Bihar Land Reform Act. Land reforms due to public pressure. There were militant actions by peasants to grab their lands. The Telangana movement, Naxalbari movement. On the other hand, there were land reforms through peaceful means. Bhudan and Gramdan movement under Vinoba Bhave. Land reforms due to combined efforts of state and people. Example like West Bengal. People were aware about their rights and the philosophy of government were also aligned with the philosophy of land reformers. On the basis of the objective in land reforms, they can be divided into liberating measures. It aimed at emancipation of actual tillers, farmers from the hold of zamindars. This was achieved through transforming of occupancy rights or through tenancy reforms like Operation Barga, West Bengal. Distributive measures. They were achieved by redistributing material resources to the land as farmers as promised by Article 39 of Indian Constitution. Organizational reform. It aimed at the creation of agricultural organizations and cooperatives which will help in giving economy of scale to farmers. Development reform. Green revolution. Components of land reform: abolition of intermediaries, abolition of zamindari system, tenancy of reforms, land ceiling, distributing of surplus land to landless, consolidation of land holding by farming cooperatives. East Punjab Holdings Act 1940. Abolition of intermediaries was the most successful component of the land reforms. Zamindari abolition was only partially successful, or that also because of the wanted heavy compensation and subsidies for sugar mills and rice mills. They became tenants on their own lands. The National Commission on Agriculture asserted that India's ratio of agricultural land per capita is such that tenancy reforms can't be entirely effective. Just after independence, 53% of agricultural land was held by 7% of the farmers. However, according to study titled Empowerment and Efficiency, Tenancy Reforms in West Bengal, although the tenancy reforms in Bengal like Operation Barga resulted in an increase in agricultural productivity. Land ceiling clauses were ineffective because they were deliberately laden with loopholes. Zamindars resorted to benami transfers. They divided their joint family and even gave formal divorce to wives to protect their land. Okay. Consolidation of land holdings and formation of cooperatives. Consolidation of land holdings and formation of cooperative was a concept which people failed to understand, and therefore, with exceptions on states like Maharashtra and Gujarat, we see failure of cooperative movement in India. However, on the East Punjab Holding Act of 1948, which was successfully consolidation of agricultural holdings was compulsory, therefore we see success of green revolution in India. According to PRS page 100, land policy in India has undergone broadly 4 phases. The first phase, land reform measures. The second phase, the focus was on bringing uncultivated land under agriculture with the help of green revolution technology. Third phase, the focus was towards water and soil conservation through programs like drought-prone area development, desert area development program. The fourth phase focus on government was on improving the land administration, consolidation of land records and their digitalization. Analysis of land reform. Since land reform is a state subject and therefore its legislation and implementation was dependent on the political leadership, according to Atul Kohali, State and Poverty in India, the politics of reform. State in India lacks political and organizational capacity in those states where the political leadership was aligned with the philosophy of land reforms, where reforms have been successful. What are social movements? Social movements are a type of collective behavior like political parties or Hello?
Yes, अन्त आयो सब्जीहरू
आयो त
ठिकै छ कि म 25 तारिकतिर आउँछु होला कि अनि त्यहाँ बसेर देखाउन जान्छ
ल 25 तारिक मात्रै हेलो
हेलो
कहिले आउनुहुन्छ अरे
म 25 मा आउँछु कि अनि त्यतिखेर हेरौँ न ल
प्रोग्राम छ 25 सम्म
भोलि पनि पारी छ भोलि अब आज 18 भइहाल्यो 19 दिन प्रोग्राम छ हो भोलि म 20 तारिकदेखि त्यहाँ प्रोग्राम छ 21 राजनीति छ अनि 22 23 मा आउँछु होला त्यतिखेर 22 23 आयो भने त्यतिखेर निस्किहाल्छ न 24 प्रोग्राम छ 25 हुन्छ म त्यहाँ
ल के भन्छ 24 कति 24 25 तारिक 24 होइन 25 26 तारिक नि दिदी डिआरआर आउनु रहेछ हो भनेको आसामबाट डिआरआर भिजिटमा अनि म मेरोमै बस्छु भनेको छ अनि मैले ल भनेको छु 25 र 26 तारिक अनि कुर्साउने दिदी पनि आउनुहुन्छ ल भइहाल्छ Social movements, civil liberties, and human rights movements, student movements, environment movements. What are social movements? Social movements are a type of collective behavior like political parties or pressure groups. There are three important elements of social movements: collective action, social change, common purpose. According to Rajani Kothari, the social movements are result of the gap between expectation of people and performance of the system. According to Dr. McAdams, social movements are these organized efforts on the part of excluded groups to promote or resist changes in the social structure through constitutional or non-constitutional means. According to Paul Wilson, social movements are deliberate collective efforts to promote change in any direction by any means not excluding violence. Deliberate collective efforts to promote change in any direction by any means not excluding violence. Example, the Occupy Wall Street movement, which started from the New York City and was a reaction to the current state of Western democracy and growing power of Wall Village. Black Lives Matter movement, Anna Hazar's campaign against corruption, Anna Hazare campaign against corruption, protest against CAA. According to Manuel Cassels, today social movements can be categorized as network social movements. In his book Networks of Outrage and Hope, he explains that most of the social movements in the Western countries had their origin in global financial crisis of 2008, created the 9/11 99% group, which is not benefiting from the current economic structure. Significance of social movement. The right question regarding social movement is not its significance, rather its inevitability. The right question regarding social movement is not its significance, rather its inevitability. Movements to oppose the present political regime establishes a system which is considered as ideal and perfectly capable to resolve the socio-political problems, and therefore social movements become redundant, and any action against the established organization is considered as a counter-revolutionary. However, in any democracy, there can't be an ideal political system which solves all the problems of the society. Dissent is the spirit of democracy. There can't be An end of history in a vibrant democracy. Components of social movement: collective challenges, collective objective, collective ideology, collective identity, collective programs, leadership, organization. Relationship between pressure group, political parties and social movements. They all are collective behavior. Normally, there is a transition from social movement to pressure groups and the political parties. For example, the INC and Army Party. Out of the three, social movements are least institutionalized. Social movements are human nature. The main question is how individuals become convinced to act on the behalf of common good. Marxists connect this with economic factors. Karl Marx, in his work Communist Manifesto, argues that workers will engage in collective action when their class consciousness is fully developed. That is when they transform from class in itself to class for itself. However, Lenin, in his pamphlets, What Is to Be Done, recognized the role of intellectual class through the communist parties. He believed that workers can't develop revolutionary tendencies without the help of intellectuals. Gramsci, in his book Prison Notebook, specified the role of organic intellectuals. On the other hand, the liberal explanation talks about political discontent rather than economic deprivation. People come together for social movement because they are looking for political opportunities. According to liberals, the political opportunities. हेलो ल्याइदिनु भने कस्तो भारी बिस्किटको दोकान खोल्नु कि ल तल लगिदिन्छु 3-4 वटा तर तल पनि आज मामा माइज आउने थाकेर आउनु अस्ति अब यति के लिएर आइरहेको छ कोकहरू हजुरआमाले खाना दिनु नभनेर यस्तो दिदीलाई मागेर खान्छु भन्दै ल्याएको अरे
अनि घिउ पनि पठाइदिएको थियो
घिउ पनि रहेछ अनि
दही
पनि रहेछ क्या अनि चिनी चाहिँ किन पठाएको 3 केजी त्यही पनि
बाबाले हो चिनी हालिदिनु भने
यहाँ अलरेडी एक प्याकेट छ नयाँ प्याकेट
अनि प्याकेट नखोली राख्न अनि त्यो अर्को चाहिँ चला खुल्ला
4 केजी चिनी त
अनि बाबाले स्टुडीमा चिनी पनि हाल्देऊ भन्नु हो नि हाल्दै
ल अनि कत्रो सब्जी पठाउनु भएको छ त
अब यसरी तल दिनु
ब्रोकली दिन्छु तल बिग्रिन्छ नि
ल
आलु चाहिँ मैले हिजो किनेर थिएँ
त्यो बस्तीको आलु हो
ल गर्दैछु On the other hand, the liberal explanation talks about political discontent rather than economic. Old and new social movements objective. All social movements aims are materialist objectives. They deal with bread and butter. New social movements are post-materialist. In their objective, they talk about improvement of quality of life. Example: human rights issues, environment issues. Class composition. All social movements are the movements of lower classes or lower middle class, while the new social movements involve people from middle class. Leadership. Whether old or new, the leadership primarily comes from the elite sections of middle class or from the upper class. techniques. All social movements primarily employ radical political radical political techniques like strikes, dharna, etc. On the other hand, no social movements employ techniques from raising consciousness of people using literary and creative mediums like theatre, movies, painting, articles, etc. Ideological orientation. So all social movements are leftist in their philosophy, while the new social movements are liberals, leftists, farmers, concerning with ground level. Social movements and political movements. Generally, political and social movements are treated alike. However, Rudolf Hurst in his book Social Movements and in Introduction to Political Sociology argues that all movements have political implications even if their members are not for political power. On the other hand, some scholars like A.G. Frank make distinction between social and political movement. For him, social movement doesn't aim for state power, rather aims at social transformation. Civil liberties and human rights movement. What are civil rights? Rights which are considered necessary for civilized existence. Example, right to life, equality before law. These rights are based on the philosophy of liberalism, and their basic purpose is to check the arbitrary exercise of power by the executive and to maintain rule of law. Civil and political rights are characterized as the first generation right by Karl Marx. Human rights are often referred to as moral rights as opposed to legal rights because they're supposed to be available to all. First generation civil political, second generation social and economic, third generation environment, fourth generation digital. History of civil rights movement in India. Human rights movement in India can be categorized necessary to civil rights necessary for civilized existence. Human rights movements in India can be categorized into two broad phases, the pre-independence phases and the post-independence phases. The pre-independence phase, the Indian national movement, can be seen as a civil political right movement against Britain. Political right against women. Nilanjan Datta, in his book From Subject to Citizen, argues that demand for civil rights in India dates back to 19th century. Demands for civil rights in India dates back to 19th century when the educated section of Indians demanded equality of opportunity and employment, freedom of press, abolition of racial discrimination, etc. At a special session in Bombay in 1918, INC presented a Declaration of Rights to the British government, which was to be inculcated in Montague Chelmsford Reform of 1919. Further, when the leadership in Congress started developing at the Kanpur Convention in 1925, demand of rights was diversified to include social and economic rights and not just political and civil rights. The Nehru Report of 1928-29 demanded for fundamental rights which include right to elementary education. In 1936, Indian Civil Liberties Union was set up in Bombay to oppose excess by the government and expose the public atrocities on political purpose. The post-independence phase in 1950s and 1960s, once India became independent and fundamental rights were granted by the Constitution, the need for a human rights movement was not felt. In fact, the national government was to act as the defender of human rights, and any case of opposition was treated as anti-national. 1950s witnessed regionally fragmented attempts to form human rights groups mainly by the communist leadership. The Civil Liberties Committee was set up in Bengal but their objective remained limited to immediate goals such as getting their comrades freed. In 1960s, India saw the emergence of Naxalite movement from the Naxalbari village in West Bengal in 1967. The movement got spread to states like Kerala, Bihar, Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and Maharashtra. In 1970s and 1980s, 70s saw emergence of human rights groups in various parts of the country. Example: Andhra Pradesh Civil Liberties Committees, Association for Protection of Democratic Rights in Calcutta, Association for the Protection of Democratic Rights in Calcutta, Association for Democratic Rights in Punjab. These organizations aimed at exposing the atrocities of state. National emergency imposed by Indira Gandhi. Ajur. पासबुक त मेरोमा छैन त बाबाकोमा त्यहीँनिर किन कसलाई अहिले आधार कार्ड त म पठाइदिइहाल्छु पासबुक त त्यही फाइलमै छ त National emergency imposed by Indira Gandhi. And 1970 was a decade when the civil liberties movement took shape in India. The initial triggers were the state's response to the Naxalite movement and later on the imposition of emergency in 1975. Economic crisis due to rise in inflation, corruption in various states like Gujarat and Chimpanbhai Patel government, which led to the Nirman movement, 1973 international oil crisis, which was due to limited production of crude oil by Arab countries led by King Faisal under Saudi Arabia. It resulted in the increase in crude oil price by 300%. Jai Prakash Narayan's movement, Total Revolution movement, strikes in Indian Railways, led by George Fernandez, demanding better working conditions for railway employees. States of UP versus Rajnarayan case. The Allahabad High Court ruled that Indira Gandhi can't occupy any constitutional position for next 6 years. During emergency, excesses were committed by the state, which led to the human rights movement becoming national in character. There were restrictions on freedom of speech and expression. Censors officers were attached with the press. Political opponents were arrested under laws like Maintenance of Internal Security Act (MISA) 1971. The government banned human rights groups like APCLC. Smriti Kothari classifies the issues raised by the human rights group into 3 categories. State terror in the form of police torture, fake encounters, non-implementation of legally guaranteed rights, along with complete indifference from the government institutions, socially structured violence on the basis of identities like caste, religions, etc. Public interest litigation in India, 1979. In 1979, Kapila Hingorani filed a petition to secure the release of around 40,000 under trial from jails of Bihar in the famous case Husaina Khatun versus Home Secretary State of Bihar. This case was filed in essay before a bench led by Justice P.N. Bhagwati. The court permitted to pursue this case even if she had no personal local standing. This led to the emergence of PLI movement in India. 1990s, India adopted liberalization in 1991, which marked a shift in its economic policy from one that was state-centric to one that was more market-oriented. In 1993, National Human Rights Commission was set up. However, it is considered as a just showpiece for international audience. There have been increase in the size of civil society in India. International organizations like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, UNHRC are working closely with human rights activists in India. The decade of 90s also saw increase in terrorism in states like Jammu and Kashmir, leading to instances of encounters, custodian death, rapes and torture. In states like Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, there was a various human rights violation because of Naxalism. According to Upendra Bakshi, liberalization has led to the emergence of human rights market. It means that human rights organizations act with corporate approach rather than the attitude of the social service. They lack legitimacy because their approach is biased. They have raised human rights violations by armed forces, but hardly talked about human rights violation by militant organization. Nandita Hakkar, HR human rights activist, human rights movements in India has to work with defined limits. The Indian state doesn't tolerate any activism going beyond the national discourse. The zero tolerance towards terrorism ultimately becomes zero tolerance towards human rights. According to Pratap Bhanu Mehta, civil society in India is dead. India needs the kind of scale and scope like the national movement if civil society is to be revived. Human rights concerns in India, as highlighted by Amnesty International report, India 2021, police torture. India has signed UN Convention Against Torture in 1997, but it has not yet ratified. As per NCRB record 2001 occupancy rate, Indian jails is 130% and 77% of the prisoners are under trial. The authorities have used repressive laws to silence critics and human rights activists. There have been instances of caste-based discrimination and violence against Dalits. The Ministry of Home Affairs cancelled the registration of 10 international NGOs working for human rights and placed 80 of them in prior reference category. It means that the organization can use their funds only after clearance of MOHA. The report highlights 38 government mandate internet mostly in states of Jammu and Kashmir. The above analysis shows that the human rights activism in India has not resulted into any qualitative improvement. Critics argue that India's commitment towards protection of human rights is more of a rhetoric than the reality. It used to be noted that so long India will continue to suffer threats to territorial integrity, there will always be a justification for threat to territorial integrity. There is always justification for tough laws like AFSPA, UAPA. Government has to ensure that the discipline among enforcement agencies. There is an urgent need for what the heck? हेलो
खोइ आधार कार्ड पठाएको
मैले त बाबालाई पठाइदिएँ नि त
अच्छा हो यहाँ पठाइदे मलाई पनि
पठाउँदैछु reservation, political representation at grassroots level. University Grants Commission introduced women's studies in many universities in India, especially academic on women movements, which will transform the social perception about women. However, women movement got divided across like caste and religion. We see that women movements in India are becoming more connected with the movement across the world. Also, the mode of protest is shifting from physical to online, with building nearby like case, the need to campaign. Free cities campaign, Chapel Market campaign, Injaratul movement against sexist curfew laws, restricting women's right to mobility, reproductive rights of women. There have been campaigns against abusive sterilization operation and inject. The women rights activists argue that such programs shouldn't be forced on women, rather it should be their choice. Anti-Arab alcohol movement. Since mid-1970s, tribal women in fighting against alcohol sale, which results into domestic violence against women and children. This is the provision that if 50% of women in a block area vote against the sale of alcohol, it will be declared an alcohol-free zone country. According to the movement in India have been successful in terms of compelling the government to prioritize gender empowerment as well as dominating the civil society discourses. Mira Desai and Usha Thakkar argue that women issues in India were missed with other identity issues. For example, the question of rise of Muslim women have been interlinked with the issue of religious autonomy and uniform civil code. According to Mother, impact of women movement in India, because they suffered from organizational weakness, the only achievement have been some pyrrhic piece of legislation with no substance change in ground reality. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6